What's up, everybody? We're here for a special edition of Head Kick Radio, and I have a special guest today, and I'm super proud of this guy because he just earned his blue belt. He's been working his butt off for over 2 years. He's a beast on the mats. Everybody, I'd like to welcome you to my friend, Kyle Moran.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for having me on here, dude.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming already.
Yeah, I know. You've been talking about this for years, I feel like, but more seriously in the last year, and then you collected all the necessary equipment and got branding figured out and a logo made and everything. I'm proud of you, dude.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's quite a process, and you kind of got me started on it. You showed me how to start this stuff off, like GarageBand and things like that, and
Here
got it
you
rolling
are,
from there.
man.
Yeah.
Official.
So let's talk about this blue belt promotion, dude. That is the coolest freaking thing ever.
Yeah, man. I mean, I thought about how you and I would drive back from jiu-jitsu when we were like, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months in, talking about how we were ready to get our blue belt. And I realized now how so far off I was in thinking that. And I was nowhere near the skill set that I have now. And I still feel like I know nothing. But still,
it's a lot of mind games that you play with yourself. Like that's
real.
the journey of belting, is just the mind games. And I look at some people, like Demetrius Johnson, who's a white belt, because he's just doing MMA, jiu-jitsu, and things like that. But he's probably one of the best jiu-jitsu guys we've ever seen. So after like 2 years of jiu-jitsu, do you think that you would like to step up to the plate and do a fight like that?
No way, man. I never want to get punched and elbowed in the face. And no way does that sound appealing to me. Plus, it's like the aggression that you have to have in MMA. The sportsmanship is so different in jiu-jitsu versus MMA. And I mean, you can see it with guys like AJ Agazarm in the jiu-jitsu community trying to do what Chael and Connor do in the MMA community.
Yeah.
And it feels out of place. You know what I mean? You watch him talking trash, and then you find so many other competitors who are deeply respectful to their fellow competitors, right? And it's different. It feels like a pro wrestling vibe in the jiu-jitsu community, and I don't know. I just feel like it's a little bit misplaced, but no, I have no plans of going to fight. I think what I want to do, though, is start training striking now that I got my blue belt and have an understanding of what the ground game is like, at least, this elementary understanding of it. And now that I have that, I feel like I can start transitioning into stand-up, and it wouldn't, I wouldn't feel like I'm robbing myself of time on the mats. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's going to be a question I ask everybody that I get on here that's going through their belt promotion, because I'm trying to figure out where in the confidence level of what belt promotion do people be like, yeah, I want to fight. So that's just something I'm going to ask. You're the first one for that question. Thanks for being the test dummy.
Yeah, no problem. John Calistine, he's the guy who won. I can't remember if it was. I think it was EBI 15. Yeah. He kind of blew up after he won because nobody had heard of him, right? Eddie Cummings was supposed to compete.
He's a Danaher guy, right?
Yeah, he is a Danaher guy. I've actually done 2 seminars with him. He's super nice and extremely good at jiu-jitsu. But now that the community sees what he's capable of, on the EBI stage, you're out in the open. Everybody sees your skills. And he was finishing dudes, with the exception of Gio, in like a minute and a half, with that inside heel hook, and just destroying people. Now he's trying to get more jiu-jitsu fights, and people are turning him down because they're scared of what he'll do to them, right? They're scared that they'll have to have a trip to the OR because of him. So he's actually making the shift into MMA for that exact reason, right? Like, people are too scared to go against him. And
that'd be a good problem to have. I would be happy if people are like, yeah, no, I don't want to roll with that dude.
Hard
no
pass.
way. Yeah, that's probably got to be a cool feeling for just strictly jiu-jitsu. If somebody's just like, nah, I think I'll pass. I'll take, another one somewhere else. I'll go do some other tournament.
Yeah, no, that someone else that they're taking, though, tends to be on the same card that he's on. So
those high-level 10th Planet boys, they don't mind stepping up and continuing that rivalry with the Danaher guys.
Yeah, that's true. Gio just fought Nicky Ryan, and that was it. That was an engaging match, and he didn't lose by submission. He lost by decision, and it was because it was just Nicky had a good game plan, right? He was attacking for the legs through the entire match, and then in the last minute or 30 seconds threw up a triangle, and Gio had to fight that submission attempt, and that's what did it. That's what it ultimately
that kid's
got
gonna be
Nicky
a
the W.
superstar. He's
Nikki?
gonna be, he's probably gonna be the kid that started so young that everybody talks about. Like, could you imagine if somebody started at this age at like 5 or 6 and look at him when they're in their 20s? When he gets into his 20s, that's going to be the kid everybody always talked about.
Oh, definitely. And interesting things are happening in the jiu-jitsu community right now. Like, Nikki is 16 and Gio is in his low 30s, right? I mean, that's almost twice the age. I was watching the On It Invitational competitions that have been going on, and there's so many of those types of matchups where you'll have somebody in their teens going against somebody in their 30s. Like, Grace Gundrum is 14 years old, and in the last On It Invitational, she fought some girl who was 32 years old. And it's such a weird thing to see somebody like grappling against somebody twice their age. And the thing is Grace won as well. And in the previous one, in the On It 6, same thing. There were women in their 30s versus young girls who were 13, 14 years old, and these young competitors are winning by submission.
I know. It's wild when you start those motor muscle memories early, what you can do once you start hitting your teenage years and you've been doing it a little while and you start figuring it out. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
And then the people, like that are like us, we're older and we got into it and we're thinking, man, how are these young kids doing that?
Yeah, right. For real. And I mean, you've been to the competitions with me. The craziest thing is when you see young kids like 10 years old and they're setting up arm bars with.
Well, I like the even younger kids where they like look at you the whole time while they're trying to do a submission. Like, hey, am I doing this right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
I think I'm doing this right. And they kind of
Looking
just
for
hug each other
approval.
and go to the ground. It's so awesome.
Funny.
Kids jiu-jitsu is the best. But
so
man,
when are you gonna get back into martial arts?
I'm hoping July.
Are you gonna get on the mats again and grapple, or are you gonna do some sort of striking?
Yeah, I have to figure something out because I'm trying to solve this back issue, and I think that I've pretty much done that for what I've been doing. And I've been doing the inversion tables and stuff like that, and just stretching and yoga and trying to
decompress and rehab. In
yeah,
the proper
decompress,
way.
but also build strength as well in that area. So I'm thinking that I would get back on the mats maybe once, twice a week at most right now. But I'm feeling like
hopefully just repping technique.
Yeah, starting slow
not
again.
rolling.
Yeah, it's not, the thing is like when I go to the gym, because I'm 6'2", 202 pounds, is I'm that weird in betweener that like I either have to roll with the small people that are like 155, 160, 165 pounds or maybe even less, or which I prefer because they're easier on my body, or I get like the 225 to 250 to 300 pounders.
Right. Dropping heavy shoulder pressure.
Because they're
on
just
you.
like, oh, you're tall, you're big, and then you get in one of those positions where your feet are over your head and you're just getting scrunched up, and your back is just like, yeah, thanks, man, I appreciate you.
Yeah, for real, and you're too stubborn to tap in that moment.
Yeah, the too much pride and ego going there. I'm not gonna tap. I'm just gonna be like, nope. I'm just gonna sit here for 5 minutes until this round ends.
Right.
Yeah,
I understand that.
It's a beautiful disaster in a way, but I'm hoping to be back on in July and just ease back into it.
Cool,
because
man.
I miss the mats. It's definitely very beneficial for the mind.
Yeah, for sure. But it's so weird, right? Trying to balance what you really want to do, right? Which is train at 100% when you have injuries, right? You start to get better at the sport as the injuries start to pile up, and then you realize one day that you need to take a break and rehab yourself.
Isn't it funny when you take a break and your body's not hurting and you think, well, oh, I didn't realize my body was hurting so badly during all these sessions, like 4 or 5 a week.
Yeah, for sure, man. I like had a lot of life circumstances like erupt and kind of hit hard, and I had to take maybe like 2 weeks off, just music festivals, change of jobs, moving into a new apartment. And now that I'm back, I feel like my body's rested and I'm not forcing things in my roles, right? I feel as if I had a chance to let what I learned sink in. I do think that there's utility in taking breaks like that. The community will tell you otherwise, and people will say that you should just keep going constantly. But I feel like you start to burn yourself out at a certain point, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and you just need to take a step away, not think about it for a little bit. And then when you come back, it's refreshed. Your brain's working in a different way. That information's had time to settle, and it actually turns out to be beneficial. I don't want to say I do it all the time, but every 6 months or so, I'll take like a full week off, and I find it to be highly beneficial. Recommend it.
Awesome, dude. I want to talk about your journey. Like, talk us how you got into jiu-jitsu and when you first started out, like your first thoughts, you know, like how you thought you're progressing, what you thought like the health benefits were, that kind of stuff. But
yeah, for
start
sure.
for how you got in and go from there.
So I had always been working out from the time I was 21, 22 years old. I started going to the gym to try to get stronger and just get movement into my life and try to, gain my confidence in that respect in the gym. And I was doing traditional bodybuilding, and that didn't really get me the results that I wanted. And then I discovered guys like Bar Stars and Calisthenic Movements, like these YouTube pages that showed how you can get fit in ways that don't necessarily go with that traditional like bodybuilding or powerlifting type aspect. And I realized that I was actually capable of doing that kind of stuff. So I started training those types of movements and never really got any anxiety relief or any emotional benefits from it. I just started noticing like small changes in my physique from it. And then my girlfriend, Emily, her brother, actually trains jiu-jitsu regularly and kept telling me that I needed to go and do it. And I was resistant to it at first because, honestly, I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. I thought it was MMA, and I didn't want to get punched in the face and catch elbows.
That's a fair point, man. Nobody wants to get punched in the face.
Yeah, and you don't really know what it is until you get in there. And then one weekend I was here with you and we went out to this vegan place. I'm not even vegan. They just have really good food, and got food, and we were chilling, and you told me that you would have to leave early because you were going to go and train jiu-jitsu, and it was a Saturday. And I don't know why, but I just decided to.
Yeah, I looked at you and I was like, we were walking away and I said, yo, man, you want to go with me? And you said, yeah, I've always thought about trying it. And, the whole little story that we all tell because everybody, I think, says it. And we get in the car and we go.
Yeah, for real. So
do you remember that day when you walked through those doors at 10th Planet in Chicago for the first time?
Oh, dude, super nervous. I mean, everybody at our gym is huge. I am like 155 pounds on my best days, and I walk into a gym of monsters where everybody's 200 pounds. They're huge and they're all good at jiu-jitsu, and I had no idea, and it was nerve-wracking, but I remember Javier being there, and Javi like started showing me how to shrimp and Granby. And the first time you look at a Granby, you're like, I'm never going to be able to do this ever. It's like the weird inversion aspect of it. You think like I haven't done anything like this since I was a child.
Yeah, they put you in the center while everybody's warming up around you. And like, shout out to Javi. Javi is one of the greatest dudes I've ever met in jiu-jitsu, like from the jiu-jitsu community. So shout out to Javi.
Yeah, for real.
But talk about when you started shrimping and then that first day on the mat.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's confusing. You don't know what's going on. I think within the first week we were going through knee slice passing, and within the first 5 classes we were doing what was it? It was like shrimp out from side control, regain your shin shield, put somebody into lockdown, and then from lockdown into the electric chair. And that's a pretty advanced path. And I was doing that on like my 4th day and realized how difficult it is to move your body in these ways when you're not used to it. And, but it was after that first day that we went that I knew immediately that I was going to be doing this regularly. And I talked to Josh right away, the head instructor at 10th Planet Chicago, and was like, shut up and take my money. How do I sign up? Like,
just
get
take
me in
all
here
my
as quick
money.
as possible. Yeah, for sure. And then this one day, same thing, like under 10 sessions of going, Matt Paul, who is a Bellator fighter and purple belt at 10th Planet Chicago, was teaching a wrestling class, and we were doing like battling for head position from standing, and there were no takedowns, but it was just trying to gain dominant head position. And that was my first experience into like rolling, because it was full contact, aggressive, right? We were going 100%, and that is when I felt the first relief of anxiety from it. And then after that, I started training 5 days a week and was going constantly.
Yeah, you were in there like an assassin.
Aggressive. I wanted it.
It was a bit aggressive. That's for sure. Do you remember the first time you rolled? And
yeah, it was with you.
It was with me, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I should have probably remembered the first time you rolled.
Yeah, I got my ass kicked. Like, you don't know what to do. You know what I mean? You aren't sure of the basics. Like, you don't understand that you have to pass the guard, establish a control position, and move down the path, hopefully into submission. You don't understand any of that. So you just feel like you're groping somebody and you're not exactly sure what's going on. And then next thing you know, you're either getting choked or one of your joints is getting broken. And it's weird.
Some inappropriate touching at first.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about this.
Oil checks. But the thing is like, even when you're getting your ass beat in those days, and I mean, that never really goes away, but there's something about the release that you realize how beneficial the sport is. You realize that it's not just a workout for your body. It's one for your mind and your spirit and your emotional state and everything. And that's when you fall in love with it and you start to realize that there's strategy to it. You go to class, you learn a new technique, and it feels like you've acquired something. Like you went and bought a new MacBook, but you didn't have to spend $1,100 on it, right? You just went in, you gave an hour of your time, and now you're a better person, you're a better practitioner. You possess this skill that you didn't just an hour prior.
Yeah,
awesome.
No, that's one of my big things in life is I always ask myself, like, what am I going to do today to level up in just life, whether it's, going to the gym or whether it's doing, schoolwork or whether it's doing well at work or wherever you are, or maybe even in a relationship, a friendship, like how can I level, something up today about me? How can I be a better person? And I think jiu-jitsu, honestly, it taught me that for sure. Mm-hmm. And what's the biggest takeaway? Like if you were to sell jiu-jitsu to, a kid or somebody new, an adult, what would you say is like the best two benefits from it?
That's hard. So, I mean, obviously there's the physical benefits of it. I mean, it transforms your physique in like 6 months. You walk out looking like a radically different person just because you're using muscles that you would never use in any other workout situation. Like so many tiny little connective muscles in your body, like specifically in your shoulders that you just don't use typically. So that's A. And B is the camaraderie you feel with your team, right? You're on the mats with these people multiple times a week, working yourself to the point of exhaustion. I mean, you sometimes it's hard to walk down the stairs to change afterwards, right? You're exhausted and you're going through this grind with these people every single day. Everyone's trying to get better. Everyone wants everyone else to get better, right? Josh always says a rising tide raises all ships, right? And that's the mentality in the room for everyone. I never competed in team sports in high school. I didn't really want to because none of them really like spoke to me in that way. I didn't really like that aggressive competitive nature until I got here and realized how valuable it is, but also the fact that you could be so competitive with somebody and then as soon as the match is over, it's friendship. And nothing but love, even with people from other schools, and I never really got that. So between the physical aspect of it and the connection you feel with your teammates, those are probably the two biggest drivers.
Those are your top two selling. Oh, yeah, those are great, good points, which I feel like we could sit here and list them off all day. Mm-hmm. I would also say for me, it's like the mental benefits of it, of that I didn't want to go get in road rage with anybody anymore after practice, especially, I was exhausted if if you're willing to take yourself to that point. And then it's helped me be more patient in life. But also my favorite thing about it is like that was the hardest part of my day. So no matter what I did other than that, if I, had to wake up early, like nobody likes waking up early. Well, it's not as hard as jiu-jitsu. So like that's already easy. So everything, like it changed my perspective on a lot of things, like schoolwork too. I'm thinking, will this matter in 10 years if I made a C on this paper, or if I make an A? Like, that's what you're going for. But if you don't, like, don't beat yourself up over it, because you're about to go into the gym, and if your mind's not right when you go into the gym, it can be a long night.
Yeah,
so
for real.
You always realize throughout the day, like, what's the hardest part of my day? It's jujitsu. But what's the most fun? What's the part I love the most about that day? And it's jujitsu.
Right,
so
right.
It's the hardest and the most fun. So everything else just seemed obsolete.
My dad was always into strength training, like typical bodybuilding. And from the time I was a young kid, he would always tell me, if you can get up and get into the gym and push yourself physically and break your body down and then let it recover, obviously, everything else is easy, right? Nothing is as hard as that. And I would think that our society would show it, right? Like,
you
so
would
many
hope so,
people
right?
are out of shape.
But I mean, see, that's another great point though that you're bringing up, is when you would go into the gym, and you're talking like going 4 or 5 days a week, because man, you would hit other levels. Yeah, I recommend like 2 or 3 for people, and if you're starting out, 1 to 2. As somebody who's coming back again, like, that's what I'm trying to tell myself. I'm like, act like you're a beginner all over again, so you don't keep having these same problems. But like, that's what I want to get to here is, think about like when you were going to the gym and you would go home, and how then you had to start learning to take care of your body if you wanted to keep getting back into the gym. See, it had another added benefit. So you probably started eating a little cleaner. You probably started using ice, on your sore, achy muscles and joints and things like that. Like, what did you do? Like, how did you change your regimen?
So much. The act of going to jiu-jitsu, it caused me to start researching so many other things for that exact reason. Like, my body was hurting, and I wanted to stay on the mats as much as possible, and not only stay on the mats, but not get injured, right? And the idea of recovery and decompression, literally never did it. I thought the only way to go about it was to get a deep tissue massage and stretch, like try to touch your toes, and that was it. And I started realizing that there's so many affordable tools you can get that help, like the Supernova, that blue ball that Rogue makes, or it's on their website at least. That thing is awesome, right? Like trigger point therapy.
No free ads.
Say again?
No free ads.
Yeah, right. But for real, I mean, that thing is awesome, or comparable ones that you can get on Amazon. But it's like,
you just gave another free ad. All right, keep going. But yeah, funny. The recovery stuff is very, very important.
Yeah, for real. And taking care of your body in that way. So I started like foam rolling on these like other tools, using different type of stretching techniques and decompression techniques on my time off of the mats. Even at work, I worked at a desk job where I was sitting for 8 hours a day, and started realizing how much damage that was doing, right, to my shoulders, and like, starting to roll forward and kind of like collapse in on yourself because you're sitting all day. So I would start taking breaks every 30 minutes to go stretch for 2 minutes, right? Whatever was hurting, whether it was my legs or my back. And I mean, that was the kind of stuff I never thought about that before I started training, right? Like, you could still go into the gym and push yourself through a workout without needing to do that. And people do it all the time, but over time it results in injury. Jiu-jitsu will make those injuries happen much more quickly than they would otherwise. So I have gotten obsessed with it. If you walk into our apartment now, I have like an entire section like set aside for all of the workout tools, like my kettlebells and my parallettes, and I have like all sorts of recovery tools, and Em and I will use them, not every day, but I would say 3 to 4 times a week. We're spending time decompressing our bodies and taking care of ourselves like that. And you just got the inversion table.
Yeah, I was about to say, it makes a huge difference. Like, people are like, oh, only 3 or 4 times a week. That doesn't seem like anything. But when you're training, and life happens and stuff, sometimes you just don't have time, or you don't find time to take care of yourself like that. And, like you're talking about, you can see all my little workout, stuff over here to the side, all organized, just like how it is at your place. But yeah, like jiu-jitsu did the same thing for me, that when I started rolling and, started noticing some injuries, or maybe like just wanting to get stronger, because I was like, I don't know all this technique yet, so let me at least combat it with some strength, because I don't want to get beaten up for a bigger dude. It's my pride and my ego just taking over right there. And so you and I, we started talking, and I knew like you always ate healthy for the most part, whereas I just kind of ate whatever. How has that changed for you?
So much. Em and I were just talking about this like last week, how much my diet has changed from when I was in the bodybuilding mentality. I was like steak, chicken, as much as I can eat all the
Just
time.
loading up on that protein.
Yeah, so much of it. And I mean I overthought everything, right? It's best to simplify. I was thinking like if it has health benefits for some people, I want it in my diet. So I was literally eating every single thing that was healthy. And over time, I started making these shakes that were like 11 or 1200 calorie shakes, just dense. And I would throw everything possible in it, like avocado and MCT oil and peanut butter and raspberries and blackberries and maca powder and cacao and protein and so much of it. And
you did the research on all this stuff.
Yeah, and
you would tell me all the
healthy.
benefits. Like when I would call you or when I'd see you, it'd be like getting a health nutrition class lesson.
Yeah, right. But the thing is I knew the benefits of all of these individual pieces, but when you combine them together into something that's that heavy, it's too much for the body to break down, and you end up not being able to absorb the max amount of nutrients. Timing of when you consume these things matters so much compared to just consuming them, period. I would consume them all in these shakes, and I have like some GI problems, like my body struggles breaking down food sometimes.
Are you turning into GSP, George St. Pierre? He's having like diverticulitis.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually happens over time. I mean, not as much now, but when I was drinking those shakes, it was just too much. And now I've simplified. I've like started. I still consume the stuff that's in them, but now I'm actually like eating the berries opposed to putting them in a blender, right, and making a shake out of it. And I find that simple is best. And for some people, the fasting works. You were doing that.
Yeah, no, I still do it. I've been doing it. That's the only reason why I'm not getting fat right now is because of fasting. I fast about 16 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week. But so I try to eat clean, like salads, steaks, hamburger meat, all cooked by myself. Chicken here and there, fish when I can. Lots of vegetables, a little bit of fruit here and there, just when you get that sweet tooth, just to stay away from a candy bar. But yeah, fasting I think is my biggest thing. There's something, I don't know, it's very primal to me too, because like when I'm coming near to the end of my fast, like if I hit a workout in before the fast is over, before I eat something, like I don't know. I feel like when you ever see somebody just get up and like beat their chest like a gorilla, I feel like that after my workouts. When you're hungry, I don't know. I enjoy it. Like the fasting to me is just a primal thing. It's more of, feeding the pride and ego of myself, of like, how tough am I? And since I'm not on the mats, I have to test myself, like how tough can I be? It's really dumb, but it's what I do.
No, I mean, it's still another mental test. I probably could do the fast. The only thing is it's very difficult for me to eat as many calories as I need to eat to not drop weight, because it's very hard for me to maintain.
Yeah, see, I was wanting to point that out because like we would, as I'm losing weight a little, actually I never lost weight. I gained weight doing jiu-jitsu. I was 188 when I started jiu-jitsu, and then I got up to 205.
Yeah, but it was muscle that you put on.
Right. So jiu-jitsu kind of had the opposite effect on me, whereas you were trying to put on muscle and stuff like that, but you were like, man, I can't get up, past 155.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I got to 160 at some point, and then that was when I was eating whatever I wanted and then training all the time. But when I started doing more jiu-jitsu and like less of the Olympic style lifts like squat, deadlift, bench, I went from 160 down to like 150 in like 2 months. It just fell off of my body. Because jiu-jitsu is so demanding in a cardio sense, it was incredibly difficult. It still is so hard for me to keep the weight on.
That's wild. Like I feel like the more you eat, the more your body's like, yo, let's just boost this metabolism up and
get rid of
it. Yeah. I wish I had that problem. If I look at like something unhealthy like ice cream, I don't eat ice cream, by the way, but when I look at it, my body's like, yo, here's an extra 7 to 10 pounds.
I had ice cream 2 nights ago. It was delicious.
Oh, I'm so jealous of you. So you have that problem I wish I had, where I could just, get away with eating things that I shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I eat more sugar than I should, that's for sure, but it's difficult. The thing is with those diets, right, is like there is no one size fits all. Every person has to modify what they're doing for their specific goals and what they want in mind. I would have people at work ask me for like diet tips and workout tips and whatnot, and it would end up me question them about their lifestyle for 20 minutes before I could even give them any advice to figure out, because the whole idea is making small tweaks in your day instead of doing these drastic changes. The small tweaks over time will lead to big benefits, but if you try to change everything you're doing in one day, you might keep it up for a week, but it's for sure going to fall off because it's just way too much to incorporate into your habitual routine.
It's too many hard life changes at one time that don't stick.
Sure.
But that's wild. Remember when we started there and the great group of guys that go to 10th Planet Chicago, and we would kind of just give each other some bro science, and a lot of it was really kind of good bro science.
It's all bro science though.
It is all bro science, but like it's better than what people are normally doing. So we just tended to get a little healthier anyway. But when you look back on it, it's kind of like looking back on your teenage years or something. And you just laugh at yourself.
Oh,
like,
yeah, for sure.
We're so goofy. And we're still goofy. And when we look back, in a few years from now, we're just going to be like, remember we had that goofy conversation on a podcast? It's the same thing, but it's funny that, the leveling up, as I like to call it, in life.
Yeah, well, it goes back to that, what you were saying earlier, just trying to be a little bit better every day, right? Get 1% better every day. And you keep doing that. You keep learning something and working on your passions and hobbies and your work. And in a year, you look back on yourself and you think it's almost laughable, right? What you used to think and whatnot. But all of that is the stepping stones to get you where you are today. You know what I mean? You keep going. That evolution is nice. And it's when you become stagnant, that's when you start to feel the anxiety creeping up on you, right? And maybe your body starts failing you because you lack that momentum that you need.
Right. And so you and I were talking about later on, once we started getting more into jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, we started reading more too, about health, about other things. Like if you could recommend one or two books to the listeners that's really impacted your life, like what would they be, and tell a little bit about them without giving them away?
Yeah, right. The first book that I read, I never read as a child. Like I would read like internet articles and whatnot about music and how to make electronic music and whatnot, but I didn't really get into reading actual books until my last semester of college, and I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and that had a huge impact on me in my mental state. And it kind of just shows you a way to think, just a new way to think, a way to shift.
It gives you a new perspective, a new viewpoint. Like, hey, you could look at life this way. I know, because you got me to read it, and when I was reading it, I was thinking, oh, okay, I can see what you're talking about, because it sounds silly when you're reading it. Like even in your head, when you read that book, you're like, this is so simple. But then once you start, consciously applying those aspects to life, you're like, oh, these really work. It's just like jiu-jitsu. When somebody shows you, how to do the move correctly, and you're like, oh, that one little detail just changed this whole sequence. It's that book's the same way. It's an easy read. It's simple, and or at least it seems simple, but it's really hard to incorporate.
Yeah, right.
So I get what you mean from that book.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that book. It's old. It was written in the 30s, so there's some
they've
funny
kind of like
aspects
redone it and touched up on it, I think, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the main thing is he just shows you all of these different wildly successful people and the habits that they use in their day-to-day lives to make that happen. And there's so many similarities in these individuals. And because of the updated book that you were talking about, it's been updated for the millennium, and they incorporate new celebrities and athletes, as well as showing you like older successful folks. Like,
they give you examples.
Yeah, exactly. And you see that these laws almost span the test of time, and it makes it easy, especially when you start having self-deprecating thoughts and you're talking shit to yourself in your mind. You start to realize that you're doing the stuff that he's talking about in the book. And just from knowing that, having some context to it from reading it and having it words on a page describe something that's happening to you, you then realize that it's happening to you. And then that's what gives you the power to change it. It's awesome. Right. And then the second book would probably be Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. Emily recommended that to me, and I read it, and it was fantastic. It's similar. Instead of it being like Think and Grow Rich helps you manifest these changes in the physical world, this is how to manifest these changes in your spiritual life, in your mindset. And I highly recommend that book. It's awesome.
So is it about meditating, or
not so much?
You got me interested in this now.
not as much about meditating. It's more about the way we speak to ourselves, and he kind of gives you spiritual guidelines and interactions with other people, right? Try to see how other people are the same as you, just living a different life. You know what I mean? We're all trying to get through this together, right? And if you can look at somebody without judgmental eyes and try to view them as you and show them the love that you should be showing yourself, right? It kind of just provides a framework for thinking like that. And it's one of those things where you may not walk away being like, I learned this from this book, right? But you know that you're a better person from reading it. You know that you're going to be treating people more kindly and with more love than you did beforehand. And it's hard to not change from a book like that.
It is. But so that's why I love, like, about leveling up every day is just, I feel like if we just all would stay a little more open-minded and just be willing to say, this sounds ridiculous, but why not try it? Let's see if my life, improves from this simple little change. Just the things of saying, like, thank you and please to people. Like, it's amazing how much how much people will view you and like their thoughts and opinions and attitudes towards you if you just make a small change like that, or have a smile on your face every time you see them. And like, we all hear these like, well, it's so simple, but nobody ever does it.
Have you read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?
I have, actually.
That's exactly where that's from.
Did I tell you that I had a professor, him and I, we started a book club in our class.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and that was the first book he had me read, and so I read that one.
Emily's reading that book right now. She actually has it here with her.
It's a good book.
It's good and it's funny. Like,
it had a lot of Napoleon Hill in it, I will say that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they came from the same decade. Both books were written in the same decade and written around the same thing. And I feel as if, I'm sure they're not the first books of their kind, but they're on every reading list. You can Google top 10 self-development books, right? And both of those books are on there constantly. So it kind of like sparked a genre, and it just continues moving down the test of time, right? Like Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life is very similar to both of those books. Same kind of thing, like how to think about what's going on around you and how to think about what's going on deep inside of you, right? And how to make positive changes so that way you keep bettering the world and bettering yourself.
I always, like, every once in a while somebody will ask me, they'll be like, hey, I want to get better at something in life, or I want to get better at this. Like, if they see that I'm doing something, like, how do you do that? And I just tell them, I'll be like, find somebody that you admire, or at least aspects of stuff that you admire in people. Try to incorporate that in your life.
Yeah, right. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. You don't need to. Like, you if you could just find a good mentor, or like good mentors, like Tim Ferriss's book, Tribe of Mentors, is a good one because it'll show you even successful people are just like everyday Joes out on the street that, hey, we all fail. We all make mistakes. It's what do we do after that? How do we get better and things like that? But I always just tell people, find something you like in somebody and just try to emulate it. And that's when I learned what fake it till you make it meant.
Right.
Like, it feels phony at first, but it feels good. And then hoping it's a positive thing, that once you just keep going, and then it just starts feeling natural, and you're like, oh, I'm glad I incorporated in this, this aspect of my life, like changed it for a better way, I guess I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think those changes too come when you...
But it's like jujitsu though, a lot in that sense, is like somebody will show you a complex, series of moves to get to a finish, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you kind of just, you might get a lot of it, but you're faking around most of it until you make it to that submission. Then you're like, okay, yeah, this is where I want to be. That's how life is too. And then after a while, you keep doing that. You're like, oh, I see that little detail. I see that little detail. So you kind of faked it until you made it to the end. Now you have this great sequence that you're proud of in your life.
Yeah,
and that's why I like jiu-jitsu as well. Like, that's another benefit of it.
Well, and I mean, I think it shows that, like, I was saying that one of the first passes that I learned was the knee slice pass, and that was my first go at the sport at all. And I mean, that's not an easy pass to execute.
It was like a knee slice pass from somebody's guard, and then side control, and then you just I can't remember what we did from there, but we had like a little sequence. So like, you learned a bunch on your first day. That's why it was so complex.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is I did not use the knee slice pass for like a year because I just didn't understand how it fit into the sequence. And then one day I caught myself doing it, and I realized it, and I started practicing, and then it didn't hit me that was information that I just downloaded into my system from a year previously, right? So it shows that the content you consume changes you way later down the road, right? So even, reading these books, you read them, you may not feel the changes happening when you right when you finish the book, but over time they'll start to compound, and then you'll realize down the road that you've made some huge changes in your life for the better, and it's this idea of persistence, right? Not quitting.
We're not, that's the hardest thing I think for myself and for a lot of people to grasp, is we want to be overnight sensations, and that's just not going to happen.
Definitely.
You don't realize, like, these people, like especially athletes, when you see them on TV performing at the highest level, and you're like, oh, this person's only been in the UFC or Bellator for like 6 months or a year, and they're already getting a title shot. But like, nobody saw what the buildup was to that when they were young, or when they, started training, for the first time, and how many years it took of martial arts. And there's that rare story where, somebody's like, oh, I've only been doing this for 4 years, and here I am, fighting for a world title in the biggest promotion ever. Like, that is very rare. That's like one person every 3 years, and there's 330 million people on this continent alone, and there's like, or is that on the earth? I can't remember.
No,
it's like 7 billion, 7 billion on the earth, and 330 million on
in
the
this
States.
country.
So if one every 3 years comes, that's probably about right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had a professor in college that said, our generation is always trying to push the river, right? You can't push a river. You just have to hop in and go with the flow, and the more you push, you might tumble and fall, and you have to and end up with your head above water, gasping for air, so you just have to end up going with the flow and accepting life as is. It's definitely, I mean, you see that all the time, right? Like, we're constantly trying to make ourselves better as fast as possible, but the body doesn't react like that. Neither does the mind.
It's a hard grind every day just to get a little bit better, and you don't feel it really. It's kind of like, I think of it like birthdays, right? So each year, you turn, 25 one year, and then the next year rolls around, it's been 365 days, and then somebody asks you on that day, hey, do you feel any older? And you're like, no, because it's just that slow grind, and that's what getting better is. And just each day of putting in that time, trying to just level up just a little bit of, especially for video game players. Like, you don't just jump from one level to the the next. Maybe at first you level up quicker, but over time, as your guy or creative character, whatever, gets really good, it takes a lot longer to level this thing up. Well, that's life. The older you get, the longer it takes to really level up at things. And when you're a kid, you just feel like you're really leveling up because it's just, you're so new to it. And that's jiu-jitsu to a T. There's so many life lessons that come from that, skill set, that sport, however you want to look at it.
And I mean, I don't think that jiu-jitsu is the only way to do it.
No,
there's
I think there's
many
a lot.
practices that exist. Yoga being another one.
Yeah,
it's
boxing,
the same
Muay
thing.
Thai, chess, whatever, baseball, football.
Yeah, whatever your thing is, just keep going at it. You have to not quit. That's the main thing, is find that daily practice, find that daily meditation, that thing that you can do, maybe not even daily, but just that thing that is constant, and build it off of it.
Because you realize when it's a positive, it like we're saying with jiu-jitsu, you started eating, healthier, you started learning more about your body, you started doing yoga, you started stretching. So you took one little positive aspect and you just multiplied it naturally.
Definitely.
And I think that's big in life that a lot of people don't do.
It takes time to find it. You have to keep hunting, and you got to want it, whatever that thing is. And you have to be willing to dive into something that scares the shit out of you.
That's true. So what do you look forward to now that you have your blue belt and you're taking the next steps forward? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Because talking about that mental journey it's been so far, how do you think this mental journey is just going to keep amplifying and multiplying?
Yeah, definitely. It's just the beginning now. I was training on Saturday with people who had only been training for a few weeks, and it's so nice to be explaining the details that I know on these techniques, right? Which is, I mean, I just feel like I'm scratching the surface of it. I feel like I realize how little I know, and I want to be able to still obtain more knowledge because I deeply enjoy being able to pass that knowledge along to my fellow trainees, and in learning. I mean, there's so many good people in that gym learning from them is a type of satisfaction, but then passing that along to people who are just starting and keeping the cycle going, it's awesome. I mean, I want to keep doing that. I want to eventually, over time, gain some certifications from On It, right? Like their kettlebell certs and their mace certifications, and start to maybe get certified from the Czech Institute, from Paul Czech, who talks about like kinesiology, and then the way that the body works together with the type of food that you're eating, the type of meditation practices that you're using, and the type of physical practices that you're using, and eventually start to get into training fighters or martial arts competitors, like with their strength training, conditioning, and nutrition. So the off the mat stuff that helps, that like deeply impacts the on the mat stuff.
Yeah. So you've told me that for a long time, that you want to help athletes and, be a trainer, a personal trainer, or maybe even a nutritionist or something to help, athletes. Cause the more you learn about it, you're getting deeper and deeper into it. So when we were talking earlier, do you think that you need to do like boxing or Muay Thai or something to add a striking aspect, so that when you go to help these athletes in the future, that you have more of a base, more of an understanding to kind of relay your messages the way you want to get them across?
Yeah, definitely. I think the more that you understand in life in general, and it helps explain things to people, right? If you can use analogies that relate to what they're already doing, not using my analogies because they work for me, but using analogies that work for you. Like if I understood how to hunt, right, I might be able to take any life lesson and put it into a hunting analogy, right? That may communicate with you, right? In a way,
especially with me and a lot of the people I grew up with. Yes.
Yeah, right. And so I think that the more information you can put into your brain, the better, because you're going to be able to convey that to people in that way. And also to start striking, that would scare the shit out of me. The guys in the gym will square up with me who have striking backgrounds, and I feel so helpless because I have no idea how to do that. And I want to start conditioning myself in that way, right?
So what are you thinking? What are you thinking about doing starting out?
Oh, that's hard. I like probably Muay Thai, right? It's the premier striking art.
It's that clinch. It's kind of like jiu-jitsu in a way, like where you're close up and grabbing somebody. So it probably feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, definitely.
Throw some knees and elbows.
And it's physically demanding, right? That Muay Thai is, there's some savages who do that type of kickboxing, right? I want to learn to do that, and I just think it'll make me more physically fit in general, right? But I don't know. It's weird. I don't know when I'm going to actually like take that plunge and start. I want to. Josh is getting a new gym, and if he starts hanging bags up in the gym, then I'm just going to keep training.
Yeah, have like a one-stop shop.
Yeah,
that'd be
exactly.
great.
Keep training there, and then maybe do jiu-jitsu on certain days, and the days when I'm not able to do the jiu-jitsu grind because my body's feeling it, start doing some technique in Muay Thai and hitting bags and whatnot.
Yeah, I want to ask you, when I started, doing jiu-jitsu and building up my own personal confidence and stuff, I noticed like when I would be on places like the train or the bus and, there'd be some shady characters around, I remember always thinking I was tough because I'm a bigger guy, that, nobody's going to fight me, this and that. And then once you learn to train and you can see what like a little guy can do to you, it just blows your mind. Did you was there ever a point where when you're on the train or you're on a bus or something, you're just like, you just feel okay now because you're like, I know at least something to save my life?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. That one is like, when I first started training, I was stronger than I was now, but much less able to defend myself. And I remember getting paired off with Ben, and Ben is a smaller dude, like 120 pounds, but he's a savage and he'll destroy you on the mats. And he fucked me up, something savage. And I was so humbled by that, just realizing that somebody who you think you're able to dominate, you may not, right? You learn through jiu-jitsu that you can get people, but you also learn that you can get got, That's
so true. You got to protect that neck.
Yeah, for real. So it's like, while I have confidence built from it, I am so much like less willing to start shit with anybody. Like, I don't want to do it at all because you have no idea what this other person knows,
Yeah, I feel like I'm not as anxious of a person anymore. So like when somebody like yells profanity at me or something, if they felt like I cut them off or something,
right.
or just whatever is going on with their day and they yell something, I just let that stuff roll now. Like it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, I have no more road rage and things from it. I'm just like,
It's their own shit that gets in their way. You know what I mean? They're not looking at you, mad at you for what you did. It's their own problems, you know? And you got to, that's what I was saying earlier. You got to like realize that everybody is you just living a different life, you know? And when you do that, it's much easier to see somebody who's angry and just like let it glide off of you, or remove yourself from the situation so that energy doesn't infect your field, right? And bring you down.
That's so true.
You got to be able to walk away from that shit. And I think that the humility you gain from something that constantly shows you your weaknesses, any of these arts that we talked about will show you that you have room to grow. And if you can admit that and embrace that with a warm hug, if you will realize that the judgments you have towards other people aren't necessarily worth expressing, because you yourself have many flaws, you know. And Jordan Peterson says you should clean your own room before you criticize the
clean your
world
own
around
house.
me. Yeah, exactly. Clean your own house, you know, like pick up your shit, clean up your stuff that's going on in your mind before you try to fix anyone else. And you don't even have the right to fix someone else. It's their journey, you know. And when you can stop thinking about that, so many people get hung up on that shit. And when you can actually start to push that out of your mind and out of your frame of reference, you really start thinking about yourself and as a project and ways to better yourself every single day.
Like Jordan Peterson says, it's the hardest thing to do is to look at your own self and point out all the negative things about you, and then changing them after that. And
Right.
that is hard when you look deep inside yourself and you're like, you know what, I don't like this aspect about me. How can I make this better?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the hard part, is like identifying it and then saying, hey, I've got a problem here. I need to change this before it gets out of control and I do this the rest of my life and it becomes who I am, because I don't want to be this person.
Right.
That to me it is the hardest part. But once you change that about yourself and you start seeing these things that you want to implement in your life for the better, and you start feeling that, and then you just start realizing, when you see people that are, aggressive, mean, or, sad all the time or something, you're just like, I used to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could, if I was not that, I could easily be that.
Become that. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like if you see somebody murdering somebody, like it's so sad, because realistically we're all just, a finger on a trigger away from doing that to somebody else. Like any of these things could be us. It's just our actions and stuff that we decide to do and how to treat others is what keeps us from doing that. And I feel like if we didn't have all that anxiety and all that pressure built up in us, like you got to find a stress reliever, whether it's, having a hobby or, going and watching a sport or a movie or something that releases that stress. Mm-hmm. Then if you don't do that stuff, then you're easily close to being that person who's going to make those mass mistakes. Like
well, when you realize that when you think that that's not you, is when you're so lost, right? You have to realize that like dark side of life lives inside of all of us. And when you make peace with your demons, then they're there. When you make peace with them, you don't give power to them, and that's the main thing. You're not feeding into your own bullshit and giving power to that. You only have so much energy to give away every day, and where are you gonna make those deposits? Because that's what counts the most, and when you can start withdrawing from these negative banks and putting them into things that are positive, like your health, fitness, your relationships, whether it's friends or intimate, you actually start manifesting positive change in yourself, and then therefore in the world around you. You have so much impact on the people that you contact every single day, right? Even if you're only around them for a few minutes, that can be heavily impactful from somebody,
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, not only when you look inside yourself, you have to look inside your friend circle and say,
definitely.
Man, maybe I have a lot of negative friends or a lot of non-positive people, and as much as we want to help them, sometimes you can't. You have to make those hard decisions of, cutting them out of your life and things like that. But I think that to me has been one of the hardest parts, is looking around, like, who am I letting into my day? Now I've done a very good job of who I talk to now. If you make it into my day, I feel like a lot of those people that once they get to know me, they understand how special that is. But do you think that was one of the hardest parts for you? Like even just looking inside yourself?
In general. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was running with a crowd, and when I was in high school, that was up to no good and just making bad decisions. And when I got into college, it was like the same kind of thing. Some of the people that I was hanging around with just didn't really have the biggest aspirations for themselves in life. And I mean, that definitely brings you down too. You know, when you're around that, you don't even realize the negative impact that it's having. So it's like, it's a little aggressive, but like, you know, you have to cut the bad fruit off of the tree to a certain extent. And, you know, I noticed it when I was drinking all the time. I had certain groups of friends that I would hang out with. And then when I cut drinking, not, you know, indefinitely, but I drink so much less. Like once every 6 months, I'll have a drink now. And you realize that so many of those people, the only thing you had in common with them were those bad habits, you know? And when you cut that out and they don't, you kind of realize that you are mix matched. You know, you're only resonating with them on one part of your life. And when you can cut that part out of your life out and start focusing on the things that make you better, you start attracting those types of people who are thinking in that same way, right? Like how are you going to go to the bar with these people constantly not drinking? You know, that they look at you almost like you're not as fun. Yeah. You know,
I never felt like I was, you know, talking about leveling up. I never leveled up. After once I started realizing it and I started cutting those habits out, I was like, oh man, these are supposedly supposed to be fun, but being hungover the next day, or and then being mean to somebody, and it all compounds each other. So once you kind of cut that stuff out of your life, it's weird to think as a person. Like I was always having the hardest time trying to visualize, well, if I stop doing this, then how am I, you know, how is it gonna impact everything else? And then once you stop doing all those bad things, it starts positively affecting every area of your life.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It's not necessarily that the issue is like the going out and having a good time. It's that you're paying for it the next day. And if you've got shit to do and you've got goals, you know, like whether it's you want to graduate from school or start a podcast or, you know,
a whole business here.
Yeah. Right. Or, you know, become proficient in some type of exploratory art, you realize that you don't want to make that sacrifice. You don't want to take the 24 hours out of your life because you realize then you're not taking a step towards your goals. You're either stagnant or even worse, taking that step backwards.
Yeah, and you never want to go backwards.
Yeah, no, you can't backslide. What do they say, that New Girl?
I don't know. I don't know what they say on that. But it's crazy to me to think that all the things that I used to do and how I used to waste a lot of time, and people ask me now when they hear my day, they're like, how can you do all that and still get 7 hours of sleep?
Well, you didn't at one point. You were sleeping for like 4 hours a night, and that wreaks havoc on your body.
And then once I cut out all those bad habits, then I could do all those things that I wanted to do, like, you know, start this brand, do all my homework. And I have massive amounts of homework, you know, because I work full time too. Still go to work, still have friends, and go to the gym or, you know, train of some sort, and still find time to roll out and stretch and use the inversion table. And it's a long day, but if you consciously spend it the right way, then you find yourself getting all the things done that you wanted to get done when you started that day. You know, writing things down is huge. And once you kind of, you know, hold yourself accountable, and it comes to the point where motivation doesn't keep you going, you have to be driven then.
Yeah, definitely.
But when you start doing all those things in a day, like I was saying, that you want to do, then you start feeling better about yourself.
Yeah, you don't have time to think about the anxious thoughts that are flowing through your head. You have too much other shit going on.
It gets rid of the anxiety because you're conquering all these things from your list that you want to get done. And I think the biggest thing is like figure out how to remove that stress from your life. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have trouble doing that, but it all starts with looking within inside yourself and saying, hey, I don't like this about me. How can I get better?
Yeah, right. I mean, Josh always says to new people who walk in, because I mean, people are nervous. You know, you walk into jiu-jitsu and you don't know what it is, and you see a bunch of people like in very close quarters with other people, you know, like your legs are wrapped around somebody else's trunk, like on the ground. And like people are sweating bullets, and it's so intimidating. And Josh always says the hardest part is just walking through the door.
Yeah.
You know, just walking into the door that first time. And once you can get over that and you do it, it's already done. You know what I mean? You're a white belt the second you walk in that door and get on the mats and try it.
Yeah, I remember when I talked to him after that first practice when I went, and he just told me, he's like, hey man, congratulations, the hardest part is over. And, you know, of course, being curious, I was like, oh, what's the hardest part? And he's like, walking through those doors. Mm-hmm. He's like, now the next hardest part is walking through them again.
Right.
And he goes, it gets easier. He goes, once you're consistent. And, you know, probably didn't say it verbatim to what he said, but that's what he was getting at. And Josh, I want to like give Josh a shout out. Josh is such a good dude. So if anybody in the Chicago area is looking for a jiu-jitsu gym, I would recommend 10th Planet Chicago, especially if you're up on the north side. I can recommend some on the south side or, in the loop. If people are interested, just leave me a comment. But I want to give Josh that shout out because he's the one who got me hooked into jiu-jitsu. Like once I started going, I should say, like, and kept me going, and his knowledge and his love for it is like,
Deep.
it's second to none.
Deep.
Like there's not very many people that, love what they do as much as he loves what he does.
Dude, he's on the mats every day, man. Every day. He loves teaching, and he's good at it. He really is. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a better person for knowing him. Like, just to put it simple. Like, Josh is an amazing person, and when I got you to come in with me, and he accepted you, right away, gave you all these fair chances that he gives anybody. So like, he didn't treat you differently than he would, let's say, Joe Smith walking in off the street, but just the way he treats you. Like, I don't know how to really explain it because
it's awesome. It's a great environment to walk into, man.
It is a good environment.
It's super fun too. I mean, everybody's serious about the sport, but also they're pretty laxed people. They're not. It's different. I mean, there's discipline involved because you got to go, but it's still fun. He still makes a fun environment, and it's awesome. And I mean, I realize how much knowledge I'm gaining when I go home, back to the Detroit area and train over there. And I just realize how valuable that training is at his school. It's so good. Everybody there is top notch.
Yeah. I remember taking my jiu-jitsu like back to places like Oklahoma, and they'd just say to me, even after like a couple of months of going, they're like, "Oh, you're a white belt?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hashtag forever white belt in my life." But, I guess that to me, I think that's probably one of the biggest compliments when it comes skill wise that like somebody like Josh, who taught me so much, could get, is when somebody else is saying like, "Man, you don't have like all the things a typical white belt would have, like all the negative things that nobody wants to roll with them for, and this and that
spazziness and
he teaches you right away. He's like, just relax." And of course, he's like anybody else. He uses that amazing American Brazilian voice. Relax. So, yeah, but I mean, like, but the cool thing about it being so goofy is that it resonates in your mind, and you're like, so when when you're rolling, you're like, "Oh, I'm being too tense, or I'm trying too hard, or being too aggressive here when I shouldn't be." I always think of Josh's voice in my head saying,
"Relax,"
saying his Brazilian dialect of "relax." It's the best thing ever. But Kyle, this is the first time I've had a special guest on, and I wanted it to be you, and
cool. Thanks, man.
I'm glad that you can make it in, and we have to do this again. So everybody listening, if you enjoyed Kyle, like, leave a comment, blast out your Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is you want to blast out.
I don't even know. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty sure it's at Kymora 10P. So Kymora 10P.
Kyle, you need to start posting more too. I'm calling you out.
I know.
Kyle's
I'm real
a good
bad
guy to
about
follow.
it. You're not gonna find me on too many socials.
He's not the biggest on socials, but hit him up, leave him
better.
a message, and just let him know, because I'd love to have him on again for sure if he's willing to come back.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Definitely.
It's been good, my friend. So this is a
man. Thank you.
Special episode of Head Kick Radio. As always, we out.
Peace.